Right as she raised her glass to toast our friendship, I looked straight at her and played the video. Her, in his hotel bed. The man I was supposed to marry, tomorrow. The laughter died. So did she. So did we. Would you expose your best friend on your wedding day? Where are you listening from? Drop your city in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more true betrayal stories. People always said we were inseparable, me and Tessa. We met in 10th grade, two quiet girls who bonded over bad cafeteria food and even worse boyfriends. She was the bold one. The loud laugh, the red lipstick, the walk into a room and own it energy. I was the planner, the steady hand, the one who made lists for our sleepovers and color-coded our closet for fun. By the time we hit our 20s, we were sharing a one-bedroom apartment and a dream. Tessa would style the brides. I'd plan the weddings. Together we built something real. A small business, a life, a sisterhood. We worked from sunup to midnight, scouting venues, fighting with florists, hauling gowns up staircases with no elevators. There were nights we slept under our desks after double wedding weekends. There were mornings we laughed over cold coffee-smudged mascara and bruised heels. We made magic for other people, long before we believed we deserved it for ourselves. So when Aiden walked into my world 2 years ago, charming, grounded, kind, Tessa was the first to approve. She called him the grown man you've always deserved. She helped him pick my ring. She planned the surprise proposal in the garden behind our office. She cried when he knelt down. I remember her wiping her cheeks with the same scarf we both borrowed in college. I said yes before he even finished the question. And just like that, Tessa became my maid of honor. The months that followed were a blur of ivory and blush. Venue visits, flower trials, cake tastings. We laughed late into the night scrolling Pinterest and drinking rosé on her couch. She said this was her favorite wedding she'd ever worked on, and I believed her. Maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe I should have noticed how her perfume lingered on my guest bathroom towel, or how Aiden always stood a little too close when she was around. Maybe I should have asked why she needed to drop by the office so often, even on weekends when I wasn't there. One time I walked into the room, and they were both quiet. Too quiet. Like a movie that had been paused a second too late. But I didn't say anything. Because when you've trusted someone for half your life, you don't look for cracks. You build on blind faith. When I think back now, I realize the signs were always there in the glances I ignored, in the silence I accepted, in the questions I never asked because I didn't want the answers. I was too busy dreaming about my future to realize it was already burning behind my back. The first time I felt it, we were wine tasting for the reception menu. Tessa reached for the same glass Aiden was holding. Their fingers touched. Neither pulled away right away. It was less than a second, but enough to leave something sour behind the sweetness of the wine. I told myself I was being paranoid. It had been a long week. We were planning a 70-guest wedding with a 200-person vibe. Everything was chaotic, emotional, expensive. But then it kept happening. She'd text me late at night asking if Aiden had mentioned anything about the napkins yet, even though that was my department. She'd swing by the apartment while I was still at work just to drop off swatches, but somehow always when Aiden was home early. One afternoon, I came home to find them both in the kitchen. She was sitting on the counter. He was laughing at something she'd just said. They both looked up like they hadn't heard the door open. And for a beat just 1 second too long, they didn't move. Tessa was holding a spoon, tasting something from a pot I had left simmering before leaving for my client meeting. That was my dinner, my stove, my fiancé. It wasn't just the way she smiled at him. It was the way he smiled back. Like she wasn't just an old friend. Like she was a secret they hadn't decided how to keep yet. Then there was the towel. I'd just done laundry, folded every piece myself. But one morning, a pink hand towel showed up in the guest bathroom. Not mine. Slight scent of vanilla musk, the kind Tessa always wore in winter. That week, Aiden said he needed space to think. Not forever, just a few nights alone to calm his nerves about the wedding. I nodded, pretended to understand, pretended not to notice that Tessa also went MIA for the same 3 days. Still, I didn't confront, didn't accuse. Instead, I bought a small notebook, started writing down every time something felt off. Timestamps, receipts, conversations I repeated in my head until they lost shape. Because once you speak something aloud, you can't unsay it. And if you're wrong, you've ruined the only things you thought were real. But if you're right, what exactly are you standing in? A wedding or a lie dressed in white? The lies didn't start big. They never do. They come in soft. Like a phone call you weren't supposed to hear. A voicemail that ends too fast. A calendar that doesn't quite line up. It was a Wednesday when Tessa texted me saying she couldn't make it to our client's dress fitting. She said she was sick, headache chills, couldn't get out of bed. I told her to rest, rescheduled the bride, and swung by her place afterward with soup and some meds. No one answered the door. I texted, no reply. I waited 10 minutes, then left the bag at her doorstep. That night I scrolled Instagram, out of habit, and there she was, Tessa, tagged at a rooftop bar, golden hour lighting, her head thrown back laughing in someone else's story. The timestamp, 30 minutes after I knocked on her door. I didn't say anything. Not the next day, not the day after. 2 days later, she popped into my office with cold brew and a smile. "I'm so sorry, I missed everything," she said. I felt awful. I looked her straight in the eye and nodded. "That's okay," I said. "You looked like you had fun Thursday night." She blinked, paused, then laughed too hard, too loud. Oh, that was an old video, one of those on this day memories. Instagram does that sometimes. I didn't respond, just looked at her. And in that moment, something cracked. Because when someone lies, you start hearing everything twice. The version they say and the version your gut already knows. After that, the stories didn't add up as easily. Tessa said she hadn't seen Aiden all week, but he'd left his jacket in the back seat of her car. He said he'd been home working late, but I'd seen a credit card charge for a sushi place miles away, on the same street where her nail salon was. Aiden had never liked sushi, but Tessa did, especially the dragon roll. I started checking everything, phone locations, shared calendars, receipts. They didn't lie boldly, they lied carelessly, like people who didn't think I'd ever question them. And they were right for a while, because I wanted to believe them. Because if I admitted the truth, I'd have to unravel the entire story I'd built. The story where my best friend had my back. The one where my fiancé only looked at me. The one where my wedding wasn't built on someone else's cheating lunch breaks. But you can only lie to yourself for so long. And I was almost out of time. The evidence came on a Thursday. Plain, undeniable, uninvited. It started with an email. I was sorting through our shared business inbox, checking RSVPs for the spring wedding season. One of the brides had accidentally attached a photo folder to her reply. Wrong file. Happens all the time. Except this folder wasn't about her wedding. It was a dump of digital photos, dozens of them. Some blurry, some zoomed in from across a lobby. My heart stopped on photo number 4. Tessa, in a trench coat, kissing someone outside the Monarch Hotel. His face wasn't fully visible, but the shape of his jaw, the exact navy tie I bought Aiden last Christmas, there was no doubt. The timestamp 3 weeks ago. The same weekend, Aiden told me he was driving to LA for a conference his firm had thrown together last minute. He said he hated the traffic, said he barely slept, said the conference was just okay. Meanwhile, there he was, outside a boutique hotel at 11:47 p.m., kissing my maid of honor like they had all the time in the world. I downloaded everything, labeled it April Logistics, transferred it to a private USB. That night, I opened our shared wedding planning app, looked through every comment Tessa had left, every dress fitting she arranged, every venue she insisted felt more romantic. I started to wonder, was anything real? I didn't cry, I didn't scream. Instead, I printed out 2 of the clearest photos, tucked them inside my journal, wrote the date in the corner. Then I poured myself a glass of red wine, turned off my phone, and sat in complete silence for almost 2 hours. That was the night I stopped being the bride and became the architect. Not of a wedding, but of a reckoning. They thought they were clever. They thought I'd never find out. They thought I'd be too wrapped up in veil fittings and honeymoon details to notice 2 shadows dancing behind my back. But I saw them now, clear as day, frame by frame. And I had the receipts. There's a strange kind of silence that comes after the truth. Not peace, not relief, just stillness. Like the moment right after a glass shatters before anyone dares to move. That was me, the bride who already knew. Still smiling, still answering venue calls, still pinning boutonnieres and pretending the world was whole. Tessa would send texts with heart emojis, ask if I liked ivory or pearl, send selfies from bridal shops with captions like, "Can't wait for your big day." And I would text back, "Perfect. You're the best." Like I wasn't counting down every lie. Aiden came home with peonies one night, my favorite. He said he just wanted to see me smile more. I looked him in the eye and smiled. And for the first time in our entire relationship, he didn't see me. He saw a version of me he thought still existed. That was his mistake. Because while he played devoted fiancé and Tessa played best friend of the year, I had started rehearsing something else entirely. Not vows, not speeches, but silence. I stopped arguing, stopped asking questions, stopped caring if things made sense. I didn't need confessions. I had facts. I didn't want apologies. I wanted clarity. And the truth is, there's power in pretending you don't know. It gives you time. It gives you space. It gives you control. Every time she touched my arm, every time he kissed my cheek, I watched them, cataloged them, measured just how far people would go when they believed they were safe. I wasn't planning a wedding anymore. I was planning a reckoning. But the best part? They handed me the timeline. Rehearsal dinner, Friday 7 p.m. Vows Saturday 4 p.m. Reception toast 6:30. Tessa's speech scheduled right before mine. Perfect. So I smiled through tastings, nodded through rehearsals, laughed through bridal brunches. And all the while I carried the truth in my purse. Photos, emails, a second USB drive. I didn't know exactly how I'd do it, but I knew one thing for sure. They were going to bury me in lace and lies. But I'd rise in silk and fire. We made a promise once, back in high school, sitting on the roof of Tessa's mom's house, legs dangling over the gutter. We were 16 drunk on grape soda and a stupid sense of forever. No boy will ever come between us, she'd said, holding up a pinky like it meant something. And I locked mine with hers. I remembered that night as I zipped up the garment bag holding my wedding dress. The same pinky she once swore loyalty with was now texting the man I was supposed to marry. I thought of the time she held my hair back when I got food poisoning in Cancun. The time she paid my rent when I couldn't. The time she punched a guy who grabbed me at a bar without hesitation. She had been my protector, my sister, my home. And now, she was a stranger wearing a familiar face. That's what betrayal does. It doesn't just hurt. It rewrites everything that came before it. The week of the wedding, I slept maybe 10 hours total. Not from nerves, not from stress, but from calculation. Where would I stand? Who would be watching? What exact second would leave the deepest impact? I wasn't angry anymore. I was surgical. There was no fixing this, no heart-to-heart, no confrontation that would give me closure. Because closure wasn't what I wanted anymore. Justice was. So I pressed my dress one last time, printed a fresh copy of the photos, tested the USB drive in 3 different laptops, and told myself this isn't the end of something. It's the reveal. They thought I'd walk down the aisle blind, but I'd be walking in with eyes wide open, and they'd feel every step. I didn't plan a wedding that week. I planned an unveiling. Every moment was rehearsed. Every smile was measured. Every lie they told, I let it sit like a wine I'd already poisoned. Monday morning, I called the AV technician. Said I wanted a slideshow after the speeches. Just a tribute to love, I told him. Soft music, a few photos. Keep it simple. He asked if I wanted to test the file in advance. I said no. I trust you. I smiled. It wasn't a compliment, it was a dare. Tuesday, I bought a second USB, identical to the first. One would go in my clutch, the other in the gift box for the DJ. A backup plan for betrayal. That night, I met Tessa for coffee. She wore a white blouse so pristine, so crisp. Said she'd found the perfect quote for her maid of honor speech. Something about friendship outlasting time. I nodded, told her it sounded beautiful. I asked if she was nervous to speak. She laughed. I'm more nervous about crying than saying something stupid. I looked at her, really looked. The woman across from me had held my secrets, cried at my lowest points, danced barefoot with me in midnight parking lots. And now she didn't even flinch under the weight of her lie. It wasn't guilt that surprised me. It was ease. Wednesday, I reprinted the program timeline. Made sure her speech was locked right before mine. We'd always joked we'd be the closing act of each other's weddings. I guess we still were, just not in the way either of us expected. I wore a face that week, flawless, bright, hopeful, but inside I was all calculation. I picked my words like weapons, laughed at jokes I'd never heard, held hands with a man whose fingerprints were still on my best friend's waist. And no one suspected a thing, not even them, especially not them. Friday night, rehearsal dinner, the kind of evening Pinterest was made for. Twinkle lights, handwritten name cards, charcuterie boards I couldn't pronounce. Everyone was glowing, everyone but me. I wore champagne silk, hair swept up, a smile borrowed from another life. Tessa arrived 20 minutes late, lipstick perfect, cheeks flushed. She said traffic had been insane. Aiden was already there, laughing with my uncle near the bar, wearing the navy blazer I used to love. Now it looked like a costume. When Tessa saw me, she rushed in, arms out, scent like sugar and guilt. You look breathtaking, she said. Thanks, I whispered. You almost missed the toast order. Oh, I'd never, she grinned. And I believed her, in the same way you believe thunder right before it hits. We ran through the ceremony, practiced the procession. Tessa stood behind me, hands gently adjusting my veil. She murmured, "This is going to be perfect." And I smiled, because she was right. just not the way she thought. Dinner was a blur of silverware and stories. People clinking glasses, sharing inside jokes. Aiden squeezed my knee under the table. I turned to him, lips inches from his, and whispered, "Thank you for choosing me." He smiled like I was the luckiest woman in the world. He had no idea he was already standing inside the trap he helped build. Midway through dessert, Tessa tapped her glass. Everyone quieted. She stood, glass raised, voice trembling just enough to seem real. "Harper," she began, "you've been my sister, my soulmate, my anchor. And watching you find someone who sees all of that, it's everything I ever wanted for you." I watched her closely. No shake in the hand, no flicker in the eye, just performance. Flawless, Oscar-worthy. She finished with a tear. I led the applause. And as the room returned to chatter, I stood from my seat, walked to the AV table, slipped the USB into the folder marked slideshow, gave the technician a wink. Right after my toast, I said, "Let's end the night with something memorable." And oh, we would. Saturday, 4 p.m. I walked down the aisle in lace and steel, my steps silent, my hands steady, the calm before an execution. The sun hit the lake just right. Everyone turned to look at me, but I was watching them. Tessa, in dusty rose, holding her bouquet like a prize. Aiden, smiling like nothing was broken. We said our vows, generic, beautiful, empty. My voice didn't crack. My hands didn't tremble. I had practiced them in front of a mirror until even I believed them. Rings exchanged, kiss made, applause. The trap had closed. Reception followed like a dream on rails. Sparkler exit, first dance, dinner served on white porcelain trimmed in gold. At 6:20, the DJ leaned in. Still good to go at 6:30. I nodded, slid the final USB from my clutch. The original, untouched, unlabeled. He held it like any other request. Play as I said, no music overlay, just video. Tessa was taking selfies with the bridesmaids. Aiden was shaking hands with my father. I stood still in the center of it all, watching pieces fall into place. At 6:27, I clinked my glass. The room settled. Forks paused midair. I looked at Tessa first, then Aiden, then the guests. I know tradition says this is when the bride thanks everyone, I began, but today's been full of surprises. So I thought, why not end with one? A few polite chuckles, confusion. I nodded to the DJ. The screen behind us flickered to life. At first, just city noise, a hotel name, the date. Then them, Tessa, Aiden, kissing outside the Monarch. His hand on her back, her keycard in his palm. Gasps rippled. Someone dropped a glass. Tessa stood frozen, face draining of color. Aiden went rigid. My father swore aloud. I didn't look away, not once. When the video ended, the silence was a cathedral. I held the mic again. Not every love story deserves a happy ending. Some deserve clarity. I placed the mic down, stepped off the stage, and just like that, I gave them the ending they earned. The moment the screen went dark, no one moved. No one knew how. It was like every breath had been vacuumed from the room. I could hear the buzz of the speaker dying down, the soft whir of the projector cooling. Someone in the back cleared their throat, too loud, too human. Then, "Is this a joke?" That was Aiden's mom. Her voice sharp, disbelieving. She looked at me, then at him, then at Tessa. Tessa still hadn't moved, not a twitch. She looked young, like a girl caught sneaking out past curfew. Only this time she had nowhere to run. My uncle, the one who flew in from Chicago, stood up and said, "I think we all deserve an explanation." I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Aiden tried. He stepped forward, eyes wide, hands up like he was defusing a bomb. "Harper, I can explain." I turned my head slowly, not because I needed to, but because I wanted him to see how calm I was. "You already did," I said. 3 weeks ago, Monarch Hotel room 214. Check-in under Grant, your middle name, right? Someone gasped. I think it was one of the bridesmaids. Tessa sat down, hard, like her legs had given out. The flowers she held slipped from her lap and hit the floor with a dull, embarrassed thud. My father stood up next, walked toward me slowly like I might collapse. But I didn't. He reached for my hand, held it tight, and whispered, "You didn't deserve this." Behind him, my mother was already pulling off her heels, ready to fight someone, anyone. Maybe both of them. Across the room, the DJ looked like he'd just witnessed a murder, because he had the death of a lie. Guests began murmuring, chairs scraped. Someone opened a window. The room needed air. We all did. But I stayed still. I wanted every second of that silence to stretch. I wanted them to feel it, the weight of what they'd done echoed back through 300 pairs of eyes. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Because it wasn't a breakdown. It was a delivery of truth. of consequence. And I wasn't done yet. Aiden followed me out the side door. His voice was shaking, but his footsteps weren't. Harper, wait, please. I didn't stop. He caught up, grabbed my wrist gently, like that would make a difference now. Look, I messed up, he said. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I turned to face him. He looked smaller now, not physically, just reduced. The man I loved was already gone. All that stood in front of me was a coward with good tailoring. I looked down at my hand. The ring sparkled like it still had meaning. I slid it off slowly, held it out to him. He didn't take it, so I dropped it on the concrete between us. It made no sound, like it never mattered. You lied to the wrong kind of woman, I said. He opened his mouth, closed it, didn't follow me again. Back inside, Tessa was crying. Not loud sobs, not drama, just quiet, broken breathing. She was sitting on the floor near the coat rack, mascara-smudged heels abandoned. I walked past her. She looked up. Harper. It was the first time her voice cracked all night. I didn't mean for this to happen. I knelt beside her, just for a moment. You meant for me to never find out, I said. And that's worse. She didn't respond. She didn't have to. I stood, walked over to the gift table, picked up the box from my maid of honor, her name still written in gold calligraphy. I placed it gently beside her. A souvenir, I said. From the last day I called you my friend. By then the guests were clearing out. Some offered hugs. Most didn't know what to say. My mom kissed my forehead. My dad carried my overnight bag to the car. The venue manager nodded in quiet solidarity. She'd seen things before, but not like this. I didn't throw the bouquet. I didn't take the cake. I left the music playing. Because I wasn't the one who ended the celebration. They did. I just made sure it ended with truth. As we drove away, I looked out the window at the lake. The sunset was orange and cruel, but I didn't feel broken. I felt clean. Empty, but clean. It's been a year, 12 months, 52 Sundays, countless mornings I didn't have to wake up next to a lie. People ask if I ever talk to them again. The answer is simple. No. Aiden moved to Austin, I heard. Took a job with a different firm. I got a brief email about the ring. He asked where I'd dropped it. I didn't reply. Tessa closed her styling bookings for 6 months, then tried to quietly relaunch under a different name. It didn't work. Brides talk, screenshots live forever. Loyalty dies fast when your business is built on trust. I never needed revenge to destroy them. They did it just fine on their own. As for me, I didn't fall apart, not publicly, not in the way people expected, but I did unravel quietly. I moved out of the apartment, sold my shares in our planning agency, donated the dress, deleted the shared Pinterest board, and then I started over. I took a part-time job consulting for small event companies, not for the money, just for the peace. No wedding dresses, no speeches, no veil fittings or fake smiles. I learned to cook for one again. I stopped checking my phone after 9 p.m. I started reading actual books instead of scrolling through fake lives. And somewhere between March and June, I realized something. The woman I'd been planning to become the wife, the partner, the Mrs. Callahan, she wasn't real. She was a role I rehearsed because I thought I was supposed to. And when that story shattered, I didn't lose myself. I met myself. Not the version who needed perfect centerpieces and curated vows, but the one who could sit with silence and feel full anyway. Last month, I opened a new studio. Just mine. No partners, no themed packages, just intimate, intentional gatherings for people who value presence over performance. No one asks about my past, and if they do, I say, I almost got married once, but then I found something better than love. They usually smile politely, some nod in knowing silence. The truth is, you don't need closure from the ones who hurt you. You just need to stop bleeding for them. Would I do it all over again? Would I play that video in that room in front of everyone? Yes, 1,000 times yes. Because healing isn't always soft. Sometimes it's sharp. Sometimes it looks like standing alone while the world gasps around you. But at least it's honest. And now I sleep with both eyes closed. No second guessing, no double checking, no pretending. Just peace. And if you're listening to this, if you've ever been betrayed by the two people you trusted most, let me ask you, would you have stayed quiet or would you have let them burn? Comment below. I'd love to know what kind of ending you would have written.